Hi guys, before the video kicks off, I want to show you a blooper of when I realized that we had talked for an hour without actually recording.
Oh my.
Maybe even there's options there. So that's a team I'm not so bothered. A team I would like to talk about, but maybe more than I for the future, i.e. in 2 weeks' time, than for this, is Palace. It's easy to focus on kind of 34. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, carry on. I love it.
Guys, I just realized
he had a weird face.
I haven't recorded this video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you are recording.
No, I just started it now. I haven't recorded the whole hour. I'm so sorry.
So unfortunately for the retape, only me and Sam were able to do this. We wanted to post it very quickly. So I hope you enjoy the show, and let's roll the intro.
Hello guys, and welcome to Gameweek 34. We have just witnessed Hazard scoring 2 goals. Me and Sav are delighted and filled with good energy. So we're gonna talk about Gameweek 34. I don't know if Yogi is gonna join us. He seems to be gone to bed and enjoying his win for Chelsea and needling Mitch in the chat, but at least there's us. And yeah, Sam, why don't you start off with your wildcard team?
Sure. Where are we? So I've gone for quite a strong double up in goal. So currently starting Matt Ryan this week ahead of Hugo Lloris, thanks to the double fixtures, which I hope will come to pay dividends next week as well. And they both have a double, and then Lloris's favourable fixtures after that should see me through to the end of the season. So I feel good with that. Defence, I've gone quite strong. Robertson is just nailed on, and I love the guy, to be honest. He's been in my team since week 1. Laporte is probably the best shot at City, the clean sheets, less prone to rotation. And Duffy gives me the double up with Brighton. I might move him to a Watford player for 35 because I really like their fixtures that week, but having playing Arsenal this week, I'd rather stick with the double up for Brighton. Alexander-Arnold and Valerie on the bench. Alexander-Arnold, I'm a little bit worried about his minutes with Joe Gomez returning, but we know the upside he has, set pieces, so I'm happy enough with him at that price. And Valerie, 4.1 is crazy value. Southampton's fixtures are brilliant to the end of the season. He's been getting goals, plays in that wing-back position, so I love him, and I can't see him leaving my team. In midfield, my 2 premium assets are Mane, who I think is just the safest Liverpool option. I do like Firmino, but I was very set on my 3 forwards that I wanted, so I've gone for Mane to kind of fit that Liverpool coverage in. I don't think Salah is worth the extra money, so sticking with Mane and their reasonable fixtures. Eriksen, for me, I really like the Spurs run. I know they've got the Champions League and a couple of toughish fixtures, but they were good against Palace on their new home ground. I think 4 of their last 6 fixtures are at home, and those games are against Huddersfield, Brighton, West Ham and Everton. So I think there's points to come. Christian Eriksen for me is the most nailed. He just got 17 points in the double game week, so he's definitely got potential to get those scores. My 2 more kind of mid-priced are Jota, who I think is from what I've seen is proving a little bit of a differential this week, which I quite like. Wolves obviously out of the FA Cup now. They're going to have to put that focus on getting 7th in the league if they want to make the Europa League, which I think they will want to do. Jota's been linking up really well with Jimenez, which is a foreshadowing of one of my strikers. And he's been on a really good run of form. Got some points in the double game week, so I'm sticking with him. They've got a good double home to Brighton and Arsenal, which I think could yield them a few goals with Arsenal's leaky defence on the road. Gerard Deulofeu is currently my fourth midfielder. Very, very good in the FA Cup. Was taken off with a knock after coming on and scoring 2 goals. So I'm just keeping an eye on that. That could involve a bit of a reshuffle, but he was absolute magic. And I think at his sub 6 million price, he's an incredible asset. Just in case anyone's not aware, Watford's double game week is Huddersfield away and Southampton at home. So there's a lot to like about that. Up front, I already mentioned Jimenez, and I'm not going to say anything about him because anyone that's watching a video about FPL knows about how good Jimenez has been for his price this year. My other two are Harry Kane, captain, for the same reasons as I mentioned. For Eriksen, great fixtures, Spurs in good form. He's also still in with a shot at the Golden Boot if he can rack up a few goals together, which I think it was 2 seasons ago. He scored 7 goals in 2 of his last 3 games, so he can definitely do that. And I'm punting with Aguero. I know a few people have concerns about his minutes, but for me, he's the best. He's obviously their best striker. He's also going to want the Golden Boot. And they're going to want to win the league. You know, that's what Guardiola's here to do. I know they'll want to win the Champions League too, but it might be one of those that's worth watching if they can dispatch Spurs easily in the Champions League, which I'm not saying they can, but if they can, he might get a little bit of a rest and a bit more of a chance to play more minutes against Palace. But he and Deulofeu, I need to watch the flags on. Other than that, pretty confident with things so far.
Nice. Yeah. So obviously we're gonna get to my team, and we have 10 out of 15 players the same. So it's plenty for me to like, and I'm wondering how you feel about the double Liverpool defense. I've had them, and I've had those two and Salah, and felt like I couldn't get rid of Salah for Mane. So it was tricky with already owning 3 Liverpool players, not so much flexibility unless I wanted to downgrade Salah, which I probably should have. But still, it gets tricky. And if Firmino keeps performing, and he is performing the best out of them right now, but I see why you really can't fit him in. But yeah, let's say you want to downgrade Aguero to Firmino, there's no room for that. So what are your thoughts? Are you comfortable with the double defense?
I think I am, yeah. It comes down to a lot of different factors. Obviously, I'm confident that I want to keep Kane and Aguero for the time being. So that really rules me out of the Firmino thing. It could be that I go Aguero to Firmino, but then that would be quite a complicated kind of reshuffle of funds. I don't know where I'd put that extra money into the midfield, because I'd probably downgrade the defender as well. And there's no other premium midfielders I'm that keen on. Obviously, Sterling's one that people will consider, but I think him and Aguero is too much rotation to risk. I think with just one of them is fine. I find when teams go into the crucial parts of their season, they regress to what's made them so successful that year. And for me, what's made Liverpool successful is their defence more than their attack. Obviously, I don't have the stats to hand, but we know they've had the best defence. They haven't scored as many goals as they did last season, but yet they're having a better season. The teams they play, I'm not doubling their defence against Chelsea as it stands. I'm going to bench Alexander-Arnold. But the games they have apart from that are Cardiff away, Huddersfield at home, Newcastle away, and then Wolves at home, that's a bit trickier. But those 3 games, before that, I'm seeing at least 2 clean sheets in those games. Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold are both great on assist as well. So I think they've got high floors and high ceilings, which is why I'm not so worried about putting the money there rather than putting it elsewhere. You know, it's not a guarantee, but I feel comfortable with my thought process for it, I guess.
Yeah, the more when I heard you say that and defend it, I kind of like it. As you say, they have one tough fixture, and then it's probably smooth sailing. I should probably look into that if I can afford it. Will be, as you said, kind of a reshuffling for me as well. And yeah, the other thing I want to mention is the doubled Wolves. They are amazing value, but there's a risk because their points are so tied together. They assist each other. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I guess you can look at it two ways, really. It's kind of like, I mean, that can be a great thing because then if you fancy one of them, you're sort of saying, oh, there's maybe an increased chance that the other one gets the points. And with Jimenez being in such good form recently, I guess I'm just taking that view that I believe that. I think the other issue I have is the way I've structured my team right now. I don't know who I would fit into those kinds of roles. Like for me, well, if I'm removing one, it'll be Jota. I think Jimenez is so much better value, and he's got so many goals this season. I think it's impossible to ignore that. So I guess right now, if I was looking at Jota, the only sort of nearby person I would look at is Bernardo Silva. That's still another million to find. So I guess it's whether I'd be comfortable doing that, that would probably tie into like a downgrade for Alexander-Arnold maybe, because I'm pretty comfortable with most of my other price points at the moment. And I just don't think I'd be comfortable, particularly with the bench boost in 35, in making that switch, because I think what I would then sacrifice, I don't think I'd make it back. Whereas I expect Jota and Jimenez both to get at least one return out of Brighton at home and Arsenal at home. So I think it's just, I accept it's a risk, and it might be that my points kind of go a bit like that with them, and 1 week's great and 1 week's not great. But I think over the 5 weeks, I'm sort of confident I'll average out to a score I'm happy with. So just have to live with it, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important. The lesson to take away from what you say is that even though in a vacuum there might be like negative points factors, you have to look at your team as a whole, and if you're satisfied with your team and can justify risking a little bit, I think it's a fair risk to take. As you say,
Yeah.
they are both they are performing. It's just an argument that usually makes sense, that their points are so tied together that if they would dry up, it would hurt a lot. But at the same time, it doesn't look like that's gonna happen. So I can see your points. Yeah. So cool. Let's go to my team.
Yeah.
So we have a very similar team. I think we have about the same kind of guys that are not in, like are just not cutting it for, because I like Jota and I like Deulofeu very much, and and I like your backline more than mine, but there's something about Bernardo Silva right now. He's performing so well and he's playing higher up than recently in the season. He's starting to get the actual FPL returns, and even though the fixtures and schedule isn't great, I want some City representation, and they are fighting for winning the league, and they have to go on and score. I hope that he keeps playing the amount of minutes he has been, because then he will keep performing, and especially from that right wing spot. So that's one difference. And then we have Son, who I'm not really sure about. So I could see myself doing something like moving towards your team with downgrading Son to Jota and upgrading a defender, maybe. Depends. But I have to really consider Son, because if he just plays enough, which I have a feeling he might, because he played so much this Christmas, last Christmas, Pochettino doesn't mind playing him a lot, even though he might be fatigued. The thing I'm a little bit worried about, I think this goal he got was lucky. I'm not too keen on him, just because I'm not sure that he's in form yet, and unfortunately, I haven't seen enough of him. He has been benched a lot and rested a lot, which probably is a good thing. I guess it all comes down to the Champions League fixture. If he looks tired there, then he's obviously not back in fitness-wise. What else is there? I have a little bit of a double up in Southampton. Might be a little bit of a rotation between Foster and Gunn, and Southampton have a double game week. And then I have double Brighton, and I think double Brighton is good for game week 34 and 35. But then only Duffy will be good. But it looks like a decent backline with Duffy, Doherty, Alexander Arnold, and Valerie. I think the schedules of Valerie and Alexander Arnold and Doherty are good enough to play those three most games, and maybe Duffy one of the other. He still has okay fixtures apart from 34 and 35, so I think it could be enough. But I really like your back line. It looks very solid. It looks like it can't go wrong. We will see if I go to that, but these are like the two teams basically that I think I am considering. So it will be interesting to see what I go for. Any opinions on my team?
I mean, the obvious opinion is kind of the flip side to what you said about my team, and that I look at your midfield and it makes me very jealous. Because obviously I have Manny and Ericsson, but then as much as I like Jota and Delafeu, Bernardo and Silva and Son are definitely like in a tier above. To sort of, you sort of answered a question I guess that I would have had, which was about Son's form, because I think, sorry, I just find it. I just had it up a second ago. Yeah, apart from his last game, which actually said that he was a bit lucky to score, and in his previous 5, he had 1, 1, 2, 2, and 2. So it's not great form when there's a lot of options in that midfield. So, but I mean, you already talked to that. I think your double Southampton defences, I really like that, and it's something I'm considering. I'll just have to have a look at. Well, the funny thing is, I kind of still want the double Brighton. So if I swapped Ryan to Gunn, I'd probably end up getting the double Brighton in defence, and my team would be even more similar to yours. So, but I mean, obviously everyone focuses on the doubles as a matter of immediacy, but the Southampton fixtures post the double are absolutely great as well. They finish with, after the doubles, Bournemouth at home, West Ham away, Huddersfield at home. That's great. And it's really nice to kind of have that Valerie on the bench there, and then you can swap them in. It might even mean you don't need to transfer out one of your Brighton players when their fixtures turn, which could be really handy. Like if there's if for whatever reason we find out new information about someone like Aguero or the Spurs guys, if they're more likely to see rests or one of them picks up a knock. So it could be really handy. One area I was looking at was swapping a Brighton defender for a Watford defender in week 35, because they play Huddersfield away and Southampton at home, as opposed to Brighton, who play, I think it's Tottenham away and Wolves away. So that double could be a bit of a trap, but it's not something you definitely need to waste a transfer for. Just something that's worth considering if you think there aren't too many holes in your team elsewhere. Other than that, not much to speak about. I think it's a really solid team. I like the goalkeeper rotation, and obviously I can't fault the forwards because it's the same 3 that I picked. So
I also want to briefly discuss the Southampton double defense. I think most people will go for just one, but I think it's amazing value. 4.1 Valerie, 4.3 Gunn, and if you look at their games, they have been keeping clean sheets against all of the easy sides, and they've had a tough schedule, and they have done well against the tougher teams as well. They look resilient and like a tough side to break down. Yeah, and Valerie is he's been on 2 goals last maybe 8 or 9 game weeks. He goes forward and has some finishing skills, obviously. So that's nice, and we'll like him for the double game week especially. So let's go through to the viewers' questions. We have first Adam France, who wants to know what to do with Son because he is considering a triple up with Kane and Eriksen, or should he go for Lloris? And right now I'm on Son, and right now I feel like his risk to reward ratio is decent. I think his whole potential is decent, especially against Huddersfield. He is a rotation risk, and right now I'm thinking about taking that risk because it could pay off really nicely. Leicester won 4-1 against Huddersfield, so imagine what Spurs can do. And when he performs, he's like a 12 mil. But there are some question marks, and we will, as I said, see in the Champions League how he looks, probably. But with that in mind, that's just about Son. But we in this case we are considering. Adam mentions Bilva or Mane. I like them both. I have all of them. But I do like Bilva the most right now, value wise. Think he's the guy to go for first, and then build the team around him a little bit when it comes to the midfield, just to get that safe City representation.
Yeah.
I know people are looking at De Bruyne and feeling that he might be safe, but you had a quote from him. Can you read it?
Yes, I still have it. That's good. Yeah, he basically was being asked about his fitness. Obviously, he's had a lot of injuries this year. And he sort of said, when asked if he felt fresh, not really. I feel like my season's had double the length of other players because every time I need to make double the amount of hours, never having a day off because I need to work on my recovery. It's more draining than playing. A lot of the time you're alone, but you have to do it. So, obviously he's back playing, and he made an incredible assist at the weekend against Brighton, and there's no doubting he's got the talent, but there's not a chance he can start every single game towards the end of the season. I think they're going to save him for the really key games. So the Champions League, obviously the FA Cup final, and then it's more likely he maybe gets started against away at Man United, which obviously is Premier League, but it's a game where they're less likely to score 3 or 4 goals, hopefully. So I think his FPL returns are going to be limited, and that is going to play into the hands of picking someone like Bernardo Silva.
Cool. So Adam also has a follow-up question about Sterling. He is a little bit afraid of going without him, and I can see that. Sterling is so explosive. It has hurt me a lot this season in the past, not owning him. And when I owned him in the beginning of the season, it made my rank incredible in the beginning of the season. So I have Sterling to thank for both my highs and lows. So he's a tricky one because he's about 3 times as likely to score at home, and most of these games left, apart from the tight schedule and the rotation, they are actually away, and some of the home games are against tricky opponents. So not a fan of Sterling considering his price and that rotation risk. And it also makes me wonder, why am I going for Aguero? Because it's almost the same argument, but I feel like when Aguero plays, he should provide a little bit more of safety than Sterling. I feel like Sterling I can't really trust him as much. So that's probably the reason why. You have anything else to add?
I guess it's kind of similar to what I touched on when I was mentioning my team, and that I can deal with a bit of rotation, and I'm certainly not sitting here and saying Aguero's going to start every game, but I don't think I can put 24 million or however much it would cost into both of them, and they could both easily be rotated in the same game, and suddenly a quarter of your entire budget nearly is getting you 1 point or 0 points, as like we saw in the double game week. I know Aguero was injured in the first game, but whether he would have started the second anyway, I don't know. Sterling obviously rested for the whole second game. Like you say, 4 out of 6 of their games are away. It's getting to that time of the year where if they're a couple of goals up, are they going to go and try and score 5 or 6, or are they going to keep the ball, knock it around, not rack up those big scores we've seen? So I think it's too much money to have both of them, and yeah, the one I prefer is Aguero. So I'm kind of, I don't want to say it, but kind of happy to pass on Sterling at this point. Hope it doesn't come back to haunt me.
But Adam, we hope that gives you some comfort that we also think Sterling isn't necessary, basically. So next question we have from Drew, who is contemplating also the wild card and going for Vardy, so he can then switch to Lacazette. And what do we think about this?
This is a tough one for a few different reasons. I guess the first thing I would say is that as of now, if you're on Wildcard, you're only getting 4 free transfers till the end of the season. We're also putting everyone's going to have to put a few players from the kind of weaker teams in to supplement these big picks that we're going to have. And it might be that after the doubles go, if some of these Brighton players or, from players from other teams really don't know that appealing, and there's other teams we're going to kind of want to try and shepherd in, there might be rotation, there might be injuries. So I think when you look at Lacazette's fixture being away to Watford, then they are a team that concede goals. Newcastle, I know Vardy is on form, but Newcastle don't tend to let in loads. I think I'd be surprised if Vardy massively outscored Lacazette, and then to use a transfer on that 1 week. I think if you were confident with Lacazette, confident enough to pick him for the rest of the season, I don't know why you would be so worried about game week 35 that you wouldn't. Game week 34 that you wouldn't put him straight in. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in the same thought process, and I just like the Lacazette first fixture. I don't mind him facing Watford. All of those games we've been seeing it all season, they end in both teams to score, which is great for FPL, and love watching those games. Perfect example against Wolves. That was one of the best cup games I've seen, and yeah, it's not a big surprise to me that Watford is in this type of game with a lot of goals. Funny thing is, it reminds me of when I started cheering for Spurs. I'm from Sweden, and I started to cheer on them. I'm not sure about the year, but maybe around 2011 or something, maybe earlier. Not really sure, but they were this side. They had Modric, they had Adebayor, Gareth Bale, Van der Vaart, and their defense was crap, but they scored a lot of goals. So every game ended like 3-2 or something, which is very nice when you're watching football. That's what you want. And I get similar feeling now. That's just a little bit of fun fact. So where were we? Yeah, Laka will have a decent chance at scoring. At the same time, I'm a little bit put off by Laka. I'd rather have Firmino. I think there's a little bit more to play for maybe for Liverpool, and Firmino is in the best form out of any Liverpool player, and even though he's playing deep, he's getting in front of goal and scoring also. So yeah, if you want Laka, I'm fine with that, but I don't know. I just think there's a little bit of a rotation risk, really. I mean, Laka plays every game, but it's not always from start. Sometimes Emery realize, okay, I miss Laka, but it can happen. He can get benched, and it's not as fun. To be fair, he's good from the bench as well, but I'm not loving his total minutes played this season for that price. I think he should be more nailed on, probably. But if you like Laka, I can see that as well. And if you start Laka and he performs, he has a good enough schedule to just keep him. So that's also a nice thing, which is why I don't like the Vardy pick, because you have to transfer him out. Even though he is good against the good teams, those fixtures are just too intense for my taste. Those three last ones. Last question is from Eric Biz President. And yeah, he asks about if there's any team apart from Liverpool that we are looking at who doesn't have a double. And yeah, who comes to mind? Maybe a Belgian guy.
I'm happy to leave that just to you, because I've got a couple in mind, a couple of teams in mind who are a little bit lower down the table. So the first team, which I think maybe a few people may have looked at, they've certainly been looking at them over the blank game weeks, maybe I feel a little bit disappointed, are Bournemouth. The fixtures to go are pretty reasonable. One that really stands out is Fulham at home in the double game week itself, which is a fixture that a lot of teams can post enough goals for a double game week in one game. My concern with Bournemouth, and this is as someone who was probably looking for at least one, if not two, Bournemouth players in my first wildcard drafts that I was putting together last week. My concern is they're checked out. I think they might be on the beach a little bit. They won 1-0 up at home to a pretty terrible Burnley side at the weekend. They lost 3-1. I just don't think they've got enough to play for. And when you look at, I'm comparing, Wilson and King. You've got Jimenez, you've got Troy Deeney in that bracket. I'd rather have either of those players. Fraser and Brooks, again, I'm kind of looking at the Yotters, Delafeos, and really saying, do I think Bournemouth are going to outscore those guys with a game less? I don't think so. So it could be something that I pick up later in the season, but then they do play Spurs in week 37 at home. So their two home games are Fulham and then Spurs, and they've not been that great away. So I think I would pass on them. But a team that I'm more interested by in the medium term, although I wouldn't probably put either of their players if you're on a wild card, is Crystal Palace, who have been pretty good for FPL managers all season, albeit in fits and starts. We all know about Wan-Bissaka. Jeff Schlupp's offered a little bit. Milivojevic, if you're lucky enough to catch the penalties, and also Zaha and Batshuayi have given returns at points. Their next two fixtures are City away and City at home, Arsenal away, which is the double game. The game that would be in the double game week. So I've got no interest in those. But if you can set a team up well for the next 2 weeks, and then you have got a couple of free transfers you can use, then you've got Everton at home, Cardiff away, Bournemouth at home, and if they can come out unscathed for those two City and Arsenal games without too much of a confidence battering. There's three fixtures there that I think are something you can look at for a team that has a lot of players at good price points, particularly Zaha. Maybe he wants that move in the summer, maybe he doesn't, but if he does, that's the other three games that the people watching will remember, and will give him that extra 20-30 grand a week if he bangs a couple of goals. So yeah, not for now, but definitely don't forget about Palace is what I would say.
Yeah. About Hazard, the only guy from Chelsea I would want, and he doesn't make the cut right now, but I still think it's important to point out how fixture-proof he is. But it's just more fun to play a double game week player. And yeah, it almost feels funnier to play a shitty double game week player. We were talking off air about guys like Knockaert and Murray in Brighton. Not sure we can trust them, but just saying those names, a little bit of a better feeling than having to sweating out the Kings and the Wilson and who is going to perform in which game. It feels like a coin flip between them. Very explosive at times, so maybe it's a good idea to keep them if you go for them, and just keep them because they have good fixtures. And I guess you could try to figure out a way to rotate them at home. At the same time, yeah, I think there's better value elsewhere. And if you had one of those Bournemouth or Crystal Palace guys, my feeling is you will have a hard time choosing who to bench from your team because there's so much depth suddenly.
Yeah.
Last point, also, I think we have forgot a little bit about Man United. There's like arguments to go against them. Pogba is playing so deep. Rashford with his injuries and the schedule isn't amazing. But their last couple of games are really good. So I'm looking towards Crystal Palace, as you mentioned. I think it's a great shout. And maybe Manchester United for the game week 36 and onwards or something. Yeah.
I think that's fair. Yeah, it's such an annoying schedule because you look at West Ham at home and then you look at Huddersfield away, Cardiff at home, and you're like, oh, great. But unfortunately, in the middle of that is a pretty tricky double game week of Everton away and Man City at home, and then Chelsea at home, which is going to be a huge game, which could, they're both going to be fighting for top four. In the middle of all that, of course, you've got Barcelona in the Champions League.
Two times, yeah.
Exactly, twice. They're going to, after they rescued a miracle against PSG, even if they lose by a couple of goals in the first leg, they're still going to think they have a chance. Not that Barca and PSG are the same, but that's, the spirit that they have in the squad. They're still going to feel like they have a chance. So I feel like they're going to prioritise that. That's a massive match, a massive occasion, and they're the kind of games that Man United fans want to be seeing from their team again. So I think for me, it's a bridge too far to have a United player on my team right now. I still wouldn't trust their defence, probably even against Cardiff and Huddersfield. But yeah, there's a world where I can see popping a Rashford, Lukaku, Martial maybe in my team for that last couple of games. But this is why I say don't waste your free transfers because they could swing you some key points at the end of the season and just give you that rank you need.
Nice. Cool. We covered a lot. It's a good way to end this, I think. Looking forward to the game week, and good luck to you and all the viewers.
Yeah, good luck. Cheers.
Thanks.